Post Outgoing Payments F1612 is almost identical to the Clear Outgoing Payments app that we've just seen, but in the latter case the payment had already been made and we were just matching it, whereas in this case no payment has been made in the system. It could be that for some reason the payment had to be made manually, in other words not using the automatic payment program, or it could be just to clear, for example, a direct debit that had been made but not posted by finance, in other words a single step posting between the bank clearing and the supplier. The main difference in this case is that in the top part of the screen we need to enter the payment details. No payment media will be posted. This is just to clear the supplier account and update the bank clearing account. It may be the case that you realise at a later stage that you've accidentally cleared the wrong document, for example manually allocated payment against the wrong invoice, and want to undo the clearing. If you go into the vendor line items and click on Manage Journal Entry, for example, there's a button that allows you to reverse a document, but if it's a cleared document then you will get a message, document includes already cleared items, reversal not possible. In this case you can use the Reset Clearing app F2223. This app gives you a list of cleared documents which you can filter for a specific date range, company code, etc. You select the item using the blue arrow on the left of the line item. Here you have a choice of reset or both reset and reverse. Please be careful of the implications if payment media have already been created, and also note that if it's in an open correspondence request, a pop-up appears asking if you want to deactivate open correspondences. If you're sure there are no related documents that might be affected, you can simply click on Reset. If there are no related postings or documents, you will get the message that the document has been reset. However, in some cases, when you try to reset a document, you may get the error reverse needed for document XXXX. This is often due to exchange rate differences being posted. So in order to reset the clearing, you will have to reverse the whole document and correct the exchange rate posting. Note that in some cases you may be surprised to see an exchange rate posting if the cleared items are all the same currency. But if you have, for example, a group currency operating in the background, there may have been a minor exchange rate posting there that needs to be reversed. If you are reversing a document, you will also need to choose a reversal reason. If you want the reversal to be on the same date as the original, you can leave the date blank, but if you want to post on a different date, for example, because the original is in a period that's since been closed, you can enter the new date. Depending on your configuration, you may have different descriptions, and some options may have restrictions on whether you can change the date or not. Once you click OK, you should see a pop-up giving the new document number for the reversal. When posting a payment, instead of debiting the vendor account and crediting the main bank account, a bank clearing account is used instead. The bank statement then debits or credits the main bank account with the offsetting entry to the relevant clearing account. Some examples of clearing accounts are shown in the slide. The reason for this is so that in the system you have a separate record on the one hand of the things that you think are in the bank, and on the other hand the actual bank position, represented by the balance on the main bank account plus the balances on all the clearing accounts. You may have thought that something was paid when it wasn't, or you may have missed, for example, an incoming payment or outgoing direct debit that you were not expecting. The comparison between what you think should be there and what the bank actually has is called the bank reconciliation. With the exception of direct debits, in the case of incoming payments, the bank statement is usually updated prior to S4HANA, whereas in the case of outgoing payments, S4HANA is usually updated prior to the bank statement. At the end of the day, any balance on the clearing account should represent timing differences. However, on occasion it may indicate a returned or duplicate payment, missing posting or other error, so it's important to check the clearing accounts regularly and to do an overall reconciliation, at least at the period end, if not more frequently. An organisation may choose to have one clearing account for everything, or separate clearing accounts for incoming and outgoing payments or for different payment methods. They can also choose to post some payments such as bank fees and interest directly to the general ledger account instead of first to the bank clearing account. Note that when a payment is posted to a supplier account, usually the supplier line item will clear an invoice on the supplier account. However, in the same transaction, it's impossible for it to clear the bank clearing account at the same time, usually because the bank statement is posted afterwards. But even if it wasn't, you can't process a supplier clearing and a GL clearing in the same transaction. Also, a separate document is produced for each supplier in the payment run, but on the bank statement, there's often only one total amount. This makes automatic clearing from the bank statement difficult, especially if one of the payments doesn't go through. So you usually have to clear the bank clearing account manually using the Clear GL Accounts app F1579. The slide shows some of the automatic payment runs in one of the bank clearing accounts, but you would normally also have bank statement postings here as well. The next few slides cover some of the reports related to payments. As well as creating, amending and posting payment runs, the automatic payment run app F0770 can be used for reporting to see all the payment runs and their statuses. If you want to monitor how many payments are being made that are not going through the automatic payment program, you can use the automatic and manual payments app F1749 shown in the slide. By clicking on an item, you can drill down by supplier, currency or user, for example. The supplier payment analysis app F1750 shows the number of open payments split between down payments and other payments. In this particular case, the other payment is actually a payment that I used as an example of resetting a cleared item, hence it shows as open. With the cash discount utilisation app F1736, you can see how cash discounts have been managed, and the app F1735, not shown, is similar but shows the cash discount forecast. The supplier line item report shows the individual posting for one or more suppliers, and you can filter to see all items or just open or cleared. You can include part or down payments, and you can also group, sort and filter the report how you want. The classic GUI transaction MRBR can also be used as a quick report to easily see the different blocking reasons for a number of items. An advantage of the MRBR transaction is that the selection criteria and sorting are superior to the Manage Payment Blocks app, and you can see from the slide that there are more columns available than in the Fiori app. Also, there's a lot more information shown in the display. For example, if you scroll over to the right, you can easily see the different blocking reasons, shown by the highlighted X's in the columns in the lowest part of the slide. It indicates which items are blocked due to price or quantity, and the SD column indicates whether it's a subsequent debit or credit. You can run MRBR in manual mode and manually unblock the invoice, but unlike the Manage Payment Blocks app, you cannot block an invoice from here, as the only items that appear will already be blocked. As mentioned before, you can release price blocks here, but quantity blocks have further implications and need a document to be posted to clear the GRIR account and correct any stocks, etc. The first few payment runs after a go live often raise a lot of questions until the users become familiar with the reasons why invoices are blocked or do not appear on the payment proposal. So in this section, in addition to general tips, there are a number of slides to help you with troubleshooting the automatic payment program. When reviewing the bank clearing account, it's sometimes difficult to match the automatic payment runs with the amount on the bank statement. This is because the bank statement usually shows a single total for the whole payment run, whereas a separate document is created for each supplier payment. One tip is to match the items by posting date, but if that doesn't work, or you have too many payment runs on one day, you can add the document header text, which contains the unique ID and date of the payment run, and use that instead. Or you can use the reference number field, which contains the payment media reference, if you have more than one type of payment method or have more than one type of payment media in a single payment run. Even if the reference that you do select does not appear on the bank statement, you can filter by that reference to select all the supplier documents in a particular run, which will give you the single total to use to search for the relevant bank statement item. In this example, I want to post a single payment of 100 using the Create Single Payment app F0743. But due to a bug in the release that I'm using, the decimal point is ignored. Please check carefully the amounts during testing if you are using this app. The next slide shows a short-term workaround if you encounter the same problem and you're able to post an amount without decimals. Although of course the solution is to check if there's now an existing note available for S/4HANA to implement a proper correction. This slide shows how, when creating the single payment in app F0743, if you have the decimal problem, you can enter 100 instead of 100 dot or comma 00. Don't forget that you can have more than one bank account for a supplier. You just need to find a way to identify which invoices should be paid to which account. You can enter the bank ID in the invoice, for example. IDs can be numerical or, for example, in the slide when I added a new bank account, I changed the ID to be 3 digits representing the currency of the account. If you're running out of space in the Post-Outgoing Payments app F1612, don't forget that you can close the header once it's complete to give you more access to the line items. You can do this by clicking on the little arrow at the top left. This neatly hides the header. If you need to check anything in the header later, you can always expand it again with the other arrow. For a new implementation, you need to make sure that in addition to all the bank accounts, the relevant GL accounts are all set up. For example, for gains and losses on exchange rates, discounts, withholding taxes, and so on. The slide shows a list of common errors. A lot are related to missing or incompatible master data. By incompatible, I mean a country or currency specific payment method being used for the wrong country or bank, or trying to pay with an incoming payment method instead of an outgoing. If you click on the right-hand arrow and get the message "No data created in this proposal," one reason for this error might be that you've selected an incorrect combination of company code and suppliers, etc., where there simply is no data. It could also be that those invoices are already contained in another open payment proposal run. To find out which, click on the log button. In the slide, the log details state that the vendor 1000311 is already contained in the proposal dated 3rd of August with the ID OF02. And while that is still open, those items will not be picked up in a new proposal. If the information in the error log pop-up in the previous slide is not very clear, instead of clicking on the log button, you can select the payment run and then click on the Open button and choose Application Log. This opens up the app F1487 directly in that specific payment log. Or you can go to the app F1487 directly. In the application log, where there are items in blue, you can also drill down further for more information. It may be that you have to liaise with somebody else for one of you to complete their proposal first so that the other can start, or you restrict the criteria of the two proposals so that they do not clash. Don't forget you can delete the payment proposal run without losing the parameters so that you can easily rerun it, but you will lose any revisions. In other words, you may have to reblock any items that were blocked in the proposal run. I find it saves time to always select the additional log. If anything you want to pay is picked up, you won't need it. But if there is an error that is not immediately obvious, you can save a lot of time by going straight to the detail in the additional log. Note that if you don't choose the additional log, you will still get a smaller log with just the key error messages. This slide shows the same payment run, but in this case the additional log has been selected, and you can see that you get the full detail for each item. So here, the additional log is 293 lines instead of just the 9 lines without the additional log. Checking the exceptions, for me, is as important as checking the paid items, although I know many organisations that tend to ignore the exceptions until the vendor gets upset. Note that although it looks like you can select an item and unblock this, unblocking may only work for items with certain blocking errors. In this case, 99, item was blocked later, where an invoice that was blocked in the same proposal is now okay to pay. You should be able to unblock that in the payment proposal. Some block reasons are configured to not allow you to unblock them during the payment proposal. And of course, if you block something in a payment proposal and then have to delete the payment proposal and rerun it for some reason, the block will no longer be there and you'll have to place a new block on the invoice. Sometimes the error messages in the Exceptions tab of the proposal are sufficient. In the slide, item is blocked for payment means that the block existed before running the proposal. Sometimes you have to go to the application logs to get further information. In this slide, item was blocked later means that it was blocked during the proposal, but the second item, payment methods for this run are not specified in master record or in item, usually means that the payment method in the proposal is not the same as that in the invoice or master data, or the payment method is missing altogether from the master data. If there's only one or two items, probably the quickest way to investigate this is to drill down on either the blue supplier number or on the blue invoice number to investigate further the specific item. In this example, instead of drilling down to the same error message in the Exception tab, I looked up that item in the application log where the information was more specific. In fact, the invoice had a payment method too, but the payment proposal was for payment method I. So I could have got to that result either by drilling down and checking in the invoice and supplier master data, or by using the logs. Some other common errors are shown in the slide. The first one in particular can be quite confusing. It usually means that, as opposed to the error in the previous slide, the payment method may be correct, but it's incompatible with everything else. For example, it's the wrong country, currency, maybe something's missing, such as an IBAN number or SWIFT code from the bank master data. Again, you should find more information in the logs. The second item usually means that the total of credit notes and payments on an account already exceed the total of any invoices to be paid. Because an invoice is technically a credit on the account, a credit note is therefore technically a debit, hence the debit balance still exists. You can set a minimum payment amount so that, for example, a bank transfer will not be created if there's only a balance of, say, $1 or $2 to be paid, and the system will wait until another invoice for a larger amount is posted to the supplier account and then include the smaller amounts. The last item in the slide only applies if you have set up a check on sensitive fields, such as the bank account number or IBAN, in which case, until somebody other than the person who made the change checks and approves it, you'll not be able to pay anything on that supplier account. In the previous cases, invoices were picked up in the run but rejected. However, it may be that invoices do not appear in the run at all. The first thing to check is the parameters. Maybe you've set the date of the next payment date to a date before the invoice is due, or the invoice incorrectly has payment terms of 60 days and you're trying to pay it within 30 days. You may have an error in the free selection. For example, you might have the wrong document number in the free selection. It is possible to reverse the whole payment run, but only if no payment media has been created. This would be something to avoid if possible, as you would have additional postings on the vendor accounts and additional clearing to sort out on the clearing accounts and so on. However, if you do need to reverse the payment run, there is a template available to do so in the Schedule Accounts Payable app F2257. Although in most cases the payment media should print automatically. If there's something that you would normally do, for example change a variant on the Printout Data Medium tab in the GUI transaction F110 that you don't have access to in Fiori, you can still do most of the work in the Fiori app and then access the payment run in the GUI for the change. The Fiori app should then use the new variant even if you can't see it in the Fiori app. This section will cover some of the tasks included in the period end closing, as well as the year-end closing. It will also cover some new reports, as well as review some of the reports covered elsewhere. Although organisations may use the closing cockpit to monitor the closing, we'll only cover the individual tasks for accounts payable and not the cockpit itself in this section. First, I'll run through the type of tasks and explain the scheduling, and I'll go into the detail of some of the tasks, finishing off with the reporting, and of course some tips and tricks. In accounts payable, probably the biggest part of the closing is ensuring that all the tasks for the month have been completed. This includes ensuring that as many invoices as possible are posted to the relevant period. It would be rare to get everything posted in exactly the right period, as not all suppliers raise invoices immediately, and there may be delays in sending them, especially where invoices are sent physically by postal service rather than sent electronically. So for the first few days of the new month, any invoices referring to the old month may still be posted, with the posting date of the old month. Another task is ensuring that all the manual payments have been posted, and any open payments, including down payments, have been cleared against the relevant invoices. As part of the bank statement posting and reconciliation, Finance should have posted any manual payments, standing orders, and direct debits to either the bank clearing account or the supplier. So accounts payable just need to make sure that anything outstanding is posted to the correct supplier and any open supplier items are matched with the relevant invoices. The closing tasks for the GRIR account have been included in the GRIR section. Once everything has been posted, there will normally be adjustments to be made. Sometimes these adjustments are only done at a quarter or year end, depending on the materiality. If the organisation has more than one ledger, and is, for example, reporting local GAAP and IFRS, adjustments may be made in one or both ledgers, and in some cases may be different in each ledger, depending on the local regulations. An example of an adjustment is the revaluation of any supplier items posted in a foreign currency. Another example, depending on the materiality, is the reclassification of debit or long-term balances in the balance sheet. The year-end closing will include all tasks covered during a period end, although some may be carried out in more detail and extra care taken over local regulations, which may not have applied for period ends. The year-end carry forward is now included in the general ledger carry forward, so we will only cover it briefly here, because unless it's carried out, the opening balances in some transactions may not be correct. A balance confirmation is often requested by the auditors as part of the audit. This is often carried out around the year end, but may also be done at other times such as a quarter end or a month or so before the year end, to reduce the work at the year end. Although fewer reconciliations are required due to the new structure in S/4HANA, as modules tend to inherently reconcile, there will probably be more detailed reconciliations carried out of clearing accounts and certain GL accounts such as manual accruals, prepayments and so on. Some countries will have additional local requirements, for example the withholding tax 1099 process in the US. Some jobs can be run directly and some are better scheduled, and some can be both. There are several apps for scheduling and they all behave in a similar way, The main difference is the standard templates that they contain. In addition to being able to schedule an app for a later date or time, you can also use the scheduler to set up a recurring task to run on a regular basis, for example overnight or at the end of a period. The slide shows the standard overview page, which will show all the jobs that have been run for a specific date range, any error logs, and if successful, a results button so that you can see what has been processed. To create a new task, after clicking on the plus button, you choose a job template, which will effectively represent the transaction you want to schedule. Usually the template runs the same transaction that you could run directly, although the layout may look a bit different. On the next screen, the job template will show the default task, and you can see other templates by clicking on the drop-down and then clearing the existing task from the search field. If you don't clear the search field first, you won't see the other tasks, so be careful on that. Most jobs will then show the scheduling options, e.g. whether to run immediately or schedule for a specific time, and also whether to run just for a single time or set up as a recurring job. The rest of the selection criteria will depend on the job, but will usually contain identical criteria that you would see if you ran the job directly, although sometimes laid out slightly differently. If you could run it in test mode directly, you should be able to run it in test mode here as well. Once you click on the schedule, you return to the overview, where you can see if the job is still in process or has finished, and you can click on the log to see how the job ran. If it was successful, you will see a button in the results column, and you can then click on it to review the results. I've already covered some of the templates in the relevant section, but I will demonstrate some more scheduling jobs in more detail in this section. The scheduling apps most applicable to accounts payable are shown in the slide. The exact templates contained in each will vary with the different releases, and each system may have different templates enabled, so you'll need to double check the Fiori library in your own systems. But the slide shows some of the standard examples based on the 1909 system that I'm using. The Schedule Supplier Invoice Jobs app, F1683, is most useful for the release blocked invoices functionality, which refreshes the three-way matching, so that any credit notes, purchase order adjustments, or additional goods receipts or corrections are included, and if the transaction now matches the blocks, can automatically be released. This is the equivalent to the MRBR transaction in the GUI. It also contains the maintain GRIR clearing template based on the classic GUI transaction MR11 if you do not have access to the new GRIR tools. The Schedule Accounts Payable Jobs app F2257 is linked more to payment tasks, for example scheduling the automatic payment program. You can schedule this directly from the automatic payment program app anyway, but the advantage of the scheduler is that you can set up a recurring job to run proposals overnight, for example, if you have a lot of payments to make on a regular basis. There's also a template to delete the payment entries or reverse payments, for example if an incorrect date has been entered, but only if no payment media have already been created. The jobs in the Schedule General Ledger Jobs app, F1927, most relevant to accounts payable, include the automatic clearing template, which in addition to clearing GL accounts such as the GRIR, also allows you to clear supplier accounts automatically if you've set up the criteria. It includes the reposting of the GRIR account, in other words, splitting out the invoice and goods receipt surpluses. It includes the regrouping of accounts payable accounts, which I will cover shortly, plus post-recurring journal entries and the foreign currency revaluation. This doesn't mean that they have to be run using the scheduler, and many may be run by the department responsible for the general ledger postings rather than by accounts payable. I just wanted to list them so that you're aware of them, even if you're not directly responsible for running them, and the fact that there's more than one scheduler app. One regular task for accounts payable is to run reports to find what open items have not been properly allocated. Normally, if you are using the automatic payment program, everything should be allocated automatically. However, a payment may have been returned due to lack of funds, or, for example, manual payments, direct debits or down payments may not have been cleared properly and need further investigation. If you don't check that the payments can be cleared against the correct invoices on a regular basis, there's a risk that some of those unallocated payments may remain unallocated because they've been posted to the wrong supplier account, or they may be duplicates, or the related invoices have not been posted for some reason. When you run the app Clear Outgoing Payments app F1367, and then choose both payments and down payments, it will show you all the payments that have not yet been cleared. Selecting an item will take you into the supplier account where you can clear it if the correct item is available for you to match it against. Details of the Clear Outgoing Payments app have been covered in section 6 of this tutorial. If you have material amounts of debit balances on supplier accounts, you will normally have to show the debit amounts under receivables rather than reducing the overall payables totals in the balance sheet. Rather than adjusting each supplier account individually, there is a standard program which checks the balance of each supplier account and moves any debit balances to receivables by posting a credit to an adjustment account in the accounts payable area of the balance sheet and a debit to an adjustment account in the accounts receivable area of the balance sheet. There's an app based on the classic GUI transaction for this, which is FAGLF 101. It used to be just F101 if you were using an older ECC version without the new General Ledger functionality. Or you can schedule it to run immediately or at a later stage using the Schedule General Ledger Jobs app. Note that you have to run it separately for each valuation area, for example local GAAP and IFRS, and it will update the relevant ledger assuming you're using parallel ledgers. I will demo the regrouping of accounts payable so that the debit balances are shown under receivables by using the Schedule General Ledger Jobs app F1927. On the first screen there is the usual overview. I click on the plus button to create a new job and to choose the correct template. In the drop-down, I clear the existing search and select Regroup Receivables and Payables. By default, it is set to start immediately and for a single run. In the parameters, I choose first the company code and then I select the standard sort method for the regrouping, which in this case is called SAP. Next, I choose valuation area. I would choose IF for IFRS, which in this system will update the leading ledger, although I could also choose US for US GAAP, which updates the parallel ledger 2L. I'll enter the balance sheet key date as 30th of September and select K so that it only reposts the debit balances for suppliers. If I left it blank, it would also select the credit balances in accounts receivable and move them to the payables part of the balance sheet. I also select the display and save log boxes. Because I've not selected the generate postings box, it's still only a test run. Next I click on the schedule, then it returns me to the overview but shows the status of the job as in process. When I click go, it refreshes and shows the job as finished. There's no error log, but there is a results log which I can select. And it shows first the parameters I have selected and then the supplier account balances. If I scroll to the bottom, it shows the proposed postings. The first is dated the 30th of September and transfers the debit balances, and the second is dated the 1st of October and reverses the posting. If everything is okay, I can now go back and rerun the transaction in live mode. When I come out of the test run, I have to create a new task. Once again, I clear the existing template and select the Regroup Payables template. I'm choosing company code, sort method, valuation area, and the balance sheet key date. Then I select account type K and also select the display and save log boxes. But this time I'll select the box generate postings. All looks okay, so I can select schedule again. Back at the overview page, I click on Go a couple of times until the status changes to finished and the results button appears. This time, when I scroll to the very bottom, you can see I have to go back up a little to see the debits and credits because the details of the documents that were posted now appear at the very bottom. The same app can be used with the same selection criteria to regroup payables for different years, for example invoices due over 1 year or over 5 years, etc. The slide shows the regrouping rerun after an invoice due in 2 years was added. Where invoices are posted in a foreign currency, they update the ledger in the local currency. If exchange rates fluctuate a lot, you may need to revalue them on a periodic basis, and in most countries the law requires you to at least revalue them at the year end. If you have more than one ledger, for example, one ledger for local GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles for the country you're reporting, and a separate ledger for IFRS, which are the International Financial Reporting Standards, you can choose when to revalue each and whether to use the same exchange rates by creating separate valuations for each. You may revalue, for example, under IFRS for management purposes periodically, and for local GAAP only at the year end. There are several areas that will need to be revalued, for example supplier and customer balances in foreign currency, banks, accruals and other GL accounts held in foreign currencies. So the whole revaluation may be done centrally, or, for example, accounts payable may carry out just the accounts payable revaluation. In any case, no revaluation can take place until all the postings to the relevant area for the period have been completed and any new exchange rates have been entered. The Perform Foreign Currency Valuation app is based on the GUI transaction FAGL_FCV, and this covers all the different areas with the separate tabs in the slide. So the customers and vendors are on the Open Items subledger, And then you have a separate tab for open items for GL accounts, such as the bank clearing account, and also for GL account balances, such as the main bank accounts. Normally the default is test run, and if you want to post the revaluation, you have to deselect the test run. You can also reset the revaluation using the settings on the first tab. In the example in the slide, I've only selected one vendor on the Open Items Sub-Ledger tab, but normally you would select the whole range. As you can see, there are other tabs for other areas in the GL, but we'll only look at the vendor items here. The final tab contains details about the log and also allows you to summarise the revaluation items by vendor in the results, but not in the posting. When you execute the transaction, you will see the local and foreign currency amount for each invoice and the old and new exchange rates with the difference to be posted for each line. You can click on the message button to check for errors, or on the posting button to see the journal entries, even in test mode. From the results page, you can drill down to the individual document details if required, by double-clicking on a line and, if necessary, then selecting the Call Up Document Overview button if you want to see the postings of the whole document. Typically, a posting is made on the last day of the period, using the new rate from that day and reversed on the first day of the following period. However, some countries do not allow the reversal at the beginning of the new year. Because the revaluation may refer to a number of different documents on different accounts, and you cannot update the reconciliation accounts directly, an adjustment account reported in the same areas as the accounts payable account is used for the posting, with the other side going to the relevant balance sheet or profit and loss account, depending on whether it's a gain or loss on exchange and what the local rules are. You can also run the foreign currency revaluation using the Schedule General Ledger Jobs app shown in the slide. When the carry forward is run for the General Ledger, it now picks up the balances for suppliers and customers automatically, although you can still run the old transactions as well. You can use the Create Correspondence app F0744A to create various types of document to send to a supplier. If you click on the Create Correspondence button on the Supplier Balances screen, you can then choose a correspondence type, for example, account statement. Make sure that you select the supplier rather than customer, and then enter the supplier number and the relevant posting dates that you want to run the statement for. You have options at the bottom right of the screen to preview, send by email, or print a form. The slide shows an example of a basic form, but there'll probably be some setup to adjust the form for your organisation. For example, to add a logo and the details of your organisation, or to change the form around. Some of the reports are already covered in their relevant sections, but it's handy to have examples of them all in one place, especially if you don't remember exactly which report has a specific functionality. Although not all reports are strictly in accounts payable, you can get to some reports from accounts payable apps. For example, you're reviewing a supplier account and drill down to the invoice and related documents, perhaps to take a look at the purchase order or the goods receipt, which will probably take you to the Manage Purchase Order app or the material document for the goods receipt. The Accounts Payable Overview app is one app with a lot of different tiles, many already showing some information on the tile itself. At the top, you have to select a display currency, and you can also enter different filters. You can hide tiles by going to the User Profile button, or what used to be called the Me button, and select the Manage Cards option, which only shows up on the Overview apps. Note that in 1909 this is on the right of the screen, although in earlier versions it was on the left. In the Manage Card pop-up you can switch a tile on or off, or instead you can drag and drop them to different positions on the screen. You can also drag them to be smaller or larger. The slide shows some of the tiles available. There's a tile with quick links to other apps such as Manage Supplier Items, Manage Payment Blocks, Display Supplier Invoices and so on, and you can get to your inbox from another tile. Some of the tiles have a drop-down on the face of the app. So, for example, instead of seeing a line graph of posted invoices in the current period, you can switch to a bar chart of posted invoices by user. You can drill down for further information on many of the tiles. For example, if you click on the Parked Invoices tile, it takes you into the app Manage Supplier Line Items, filtered by Parked Invoice. Most of the apps are fairly self-explanatory, so I won't go into each one, but if you want more detail, you can either click on the question mark shaped Help button in the 1909 release, which gives the summary of each tile, or you can go to the app Accounts Payable Overview in the Fiori app library, where there's also a summary of each app and links to more detailed information such as the calculation logic for the day's sales outstanding. Depending on what process you have to approve changes, you may decide to run an audit trail periodically to either double-check larger items or generally check that no unauthorised changes have slipped through. You can see in the individual supplier master data when it was last changed and who made the change. To review the changes for a number of supplier accounts, there is the old GUI transaction S_ALR_87012089, which can be set up as an app. With this report, you can either filter on the first screen or in the layout to restrict the period of changes, and also filter by the value that you want to use. If you've made any changes to the line items, you can run an audit trail of the changes using the app Display Item Changelog. You can run it for all changes, or you can select a specific change, for example payment blocks or payment method. You can also run reports to check whether changes have been made to documents such as invoices, where changes could be made to payment terms allowing certain suppliers to get an unapproved or higher cash discount or allowing them to pay later than agreed. These reports are covered in the reporting section. The next two sections are approximately split between standard day-to-day reports you might use, for example lists or tables of the master data or documents that you're working on, and reports more typical of the period end with KPIs and more charts, although there's some overlap. The supplier balances report is quite similar to the GUI transaction, although the GUI transaction doesn't have the comparative tab or imputed interest column. The report shows the total debits, credits and period totals for one or more suppliers, or all suppliers. The most important thing to note with this app is that if you drill down into a number, the results will be filtered to match that specific number. So if you drill down on the total debits for period 3, for example, which in the slide totaled 79,950, you will only see those debits and not the credits for period 3, and not the total for the whole year. Note that the purchases total includes taxes. If you go to the Special GL tab, you can see items which have been posted with a special GL code. which means they appear on a different reconciliation account than that which is in the supplier master data. A typical example of this would be down payments, but you can also use it in areas such as bills of exchange, bad debts and guarantees. Here I selected the down payments amount from the previous slide, and it took me to the Manage Supplier Line Items app. And I can see here that there are two items with special GL indicator A, meaning a down payment. You can also compare any 2 years by selecting the latest year in the filter, and you can export to Excel as well. So we've already seen the Manage Supplier Line Items report in section 6, but just a quick run through anyway. You can enter quite a number of selection criteria in the filter bar, and you can save the selection criteria as well as the layout as variants. You can group, for example, by supplier account group, region, country, reconciliation account, accounting clerk, or head office branch code, payment method, and so on. As well as being a report, there are various actions you can take, such as blocking or unblocking for payment, creating a single payment, and also some editing. Obviously, there are many fields you cannot edit, for example, dates, amounts, GL accounts, or cost objects. In addition to editing the assignment field and the text fields, you can also change the payment and dunning fields for all the selected invoices, or just one invoice as required. You can add fields, rearrange the columns, sort, filter and group using the Settings button, which gives the pop-up in the slide. Here, as well as in the filter bar for some fields, you can include or exclude a number of items using conditions, such as contains, equal to, between, starts with, ends with, less than or equal to, greater than, and so on. You can choose which type of item to display, just normal, parked, or items with special GL. And if a customer is linked to the account, you can also see the customer items. The slide shows the selection criteria to include any related custom line items in the Managed Supplier Line Items report, and vice versa, assuming the customer and vendor are linked in the master data. We've already seen the supplier invoices list, F1060A, when reviewing invoices and their history, and it's handy to find, for example, parked or held invoices. This slide shows the same app but grouped by invoicing party and reduced to one line to better see what invoices have not been fully posted by supplier and also whether an invoice was parked before posting. This has a similar layout to the supplier invoices, but it shows the supplier master data. The interesting thing is that if you click in the blue vendor number, although you have a list of apps that you can jump to, you can also click on the actual blue vendor number in the pop-up box, and that will take you to the supplier fact sheet instead. The supplier fact sheet is very interesting, as it mixes master and transactional data, giving you a full 360 degrees view of the whole supplier. If you select the little arrow to the right, you can see a drop-down of all the different tabs that are available. The next slides show a couple of different views. The supplier fact sheet app F0354 is usually accessed from within other apps. Here you can see a list of invoices as well as evaluation scores. In this slide, there's information about purchasing and contract spend. In this slide, you can see the list of materials that the supplier has sold to us.